Okay, check this out. So what we're gonna do today is go over this device and why it is helpful and how it can help you with your breathing technique. So it's called a pulse oximeter, and I just got this off Amazon for maybe like 30 bucks, something like that, 25, 30 bucks. And it tells you two measurements. Up top, you've got your SpO2, which is your saturation percentage of oxygen, and then down low is your heart rate. Why is this important? Okay, so the top number, saturation percentage of oxygen, SpO2. What that means is if you think of our body as a cup and we can fill that cup fully with oxygen, that's what that is meaning. So I'm 96% filled with oxygen right now. Typically you're around 96 to 98 at all times. That's where you are all day, every day. Your body basically regulates itself to always have, enough oxygen. If we don't have to think about breathing, that is what happens regardless, is we kind of just sit at close to 100%. What this will help us understand is how we can control our breathing to increase our tolerance to carbon dioxide. So if we were to flood our system with carbon dioxide, that top number would go down. And the reason is because if we stopped providing oxygen, so AKA, let's say I exhaled and then stopped breathing, and just to see how long I could hold it, eventually my body would start to accumulate carbon dioxide and I'd feel that need to breathe in. The breathlessness feeling is a surplus of CO2. So that number would go down, and then as I would take that fresh breath of air in finally, that number would go back up. So this is a gauge to show myself where the boundaries are, how hard I have to push it to get a drop in my SpO2. And there's also like specific zones I want to get into, and I don't want to get into all that today. I just wanted to introduce this device as a really cool tool to use while you're doing breathwork training. Now, the other reason this is helpful is because there's a lot of backlash out there with wearing a mask, and that carbon dioxide is going to kill you if you have too much of it, and it's absolutely nonsense. When you're wearing a mask, this number will not go down, and so you can prove that to yourself. The other thing that's really interesting is if you were to work out and say do some biking or jogging with nasal breathing only, which is a huge part of breathwork training, getting good at nasal breathing, even while you're working out, your body will still have enough oxygen. So if you were to, test that out, which has been done many, many times, you wouldn't see a drop unless you started to intentionally give yourself less oxygen by limiting your inhales or extending your exhales, or both, or holding your breath after your exhales, where you're really limiting how much oxygen you're taking in while working out, which is called hypoventilation training. Hypoventilation training, which is where you're breathing less, is the way to define that. That's when the number would start to go down. So I'll do a quick demo right now, see if I can get this number to 90, maybe 89, something like that. And all I'm gonna do is I'm going to exhale, and I'm just not gonna breathe for as long as I can until it becomes very uncomfortable. Here we go. Okay, so I went down to 85. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. You can go into the 70s if you want. You don't want to go much lower than that. But basically, there was a little delay in that. If you saw, like, my fingertip is not going to tell this device that I'm building up carbon dioxide until about 15 to 30 seconds after that buildup happens. So there's a little bit of a delay in my exercise with the reading on my finger, but that's a simple example of how you can use this thing. So if you've got one of these, try this out. If you are interested in this whole category of breath work, I would highly suggest this. It really, really does help You know, if you're going for a walk, or you're doing some breath holding while you're walking, or you're doing some light breathing while you're walking, intentionally just breathing less air, even if you don't hold your breath, you can still make that number go down. And it's important that I mention, just for safety reasons, if you are pregnant or you have blood pressure issues, you really have to take it easy with this and definitely do your research first. I was turned on to this entire category and this device first and foremost via The Oxygen Advantage by Patrick Mckeown. And he also has a book that's all about Buteyko, and then another book that's called The Oxygen Advantage, which is highly regarded as probably the best book out there to teach you functional breathing and how to increase your tolerance to CO2 and why it is so important, and how this device can help. So I'll put that in the description, everything I just said, and yeah, hit me with questions if you have any. This is a pulse oximeter. Have a great night.